Welcome friends, this is Pablo Sender. I wanted to share with you some thoughts about racism because of what happened in the US this week with Charlottesville, but also what is going on around the world. The subject of racism is in all the media and also pretty much in the collective consciousness. So I wanted to explore whether there is a foundation for racism, at least from the theosophical point of view. Racism is based on our body, the appearance of the body, the genetic makeup of it. It is also based on the culture that we were raised in, with all the worldviews that we absorbed in a particular culture, the habits, the conditioning. Now the question should be, are these factors, the appearance or makeup of the body, our culture, our ideas, our habits, are all these essential parts of what we are, or they are mere accidents? In the theosophical view, what we really are is the soul. It is the soul that is the essential factor, the eternal or enduring factor, and the body is a passing aspect of our being. The soul, of course, is devoid of any gender, any race or color, even any culture or idea. So to identify ourselves with this particular body and culture is not intelligent. Now you may say, well, even if the soul is the essential aspect, this particular body is the expression of the soul. And that is true. Now the question would be, is this particular body a special expression of the soul? Or does the soul have many different expressions? You see, here is where the theory of reincarnation comes in, and I think it can throw light on the problem of racism. Because from the theosophical point of view, the soul incarnates in different bodies at different times, in different cultures and countries, many times. We have been, as a soul, inhabiting bodies in the past that may have been born in Africa, in America, in India, and we will have bodies that we will inhabit that may be born in China or in other parts of Europe. So this particular expression of the soul is not special. It's just what happens to be happening right now. Now, the soul incarnates in all these different cultures because it needs to learn different experiences. There is no progression from one culture to the other. It is like painting a picture. You can start from different places. You can start in different ways. There is no a right progression as you develop your art. So in a similar way, a soul may be incarnated first in a highly technologically developed country, and next incarnation in a country that is quite primitive for those standards. We have to learn to see what is the essential from the point of view of the soul. So for example, being able to read and knowing about science, is that a sign of a more evolved soul? Of course, you need to know how to read if you are going to be born in Western countries, but that is just a circumstantial necessity. For example, if the soul in any given incarnation needs to learn more about communing with nature, it probably can learn that much better in a native culture, regardless of whether they know how to read or not. The ability to read from the point of view of the soul that wants to learn to commune with nature is irrelevant. So what we have to understand is that the different experiences that the soul has by being born in different cultures, different families, at different times, are all important. None of them is better than the other. So at some point, the soul may need to learn about family, about community, and it will be born in a culture that provides the necessary experience. At another point, the soul may need to learn about ambition and development and technology. It may be born in a different culture, in a different nation. So all experience are necessary. From this point of view, it is silly to identify ourselves with one particular experience and think that this is it. Because in previous incarnations we were inhabiting different bodies of different races, and we will do so in future incarnations. Now, we may say there are differences between the cultures, the countries, the races. Of course, there are some, as we have been saying, some races, some civilizations develop more one aspect than the other, and these are all, as we said, important for the development of the soul. Now, the question is whether the souls that incarnate in a particular country, let's say, are inherently limited or inherently better than the others. Of course, if we understand what we just discussed, we see that that is not the case. But I wanted to bring something that Blavatsky said in 1888 or 1889 when she published the second volume of The Secret Doctrine. She addresses this problem. At the time, the European countries regarded the cultures, for example, in Africa or in Asia, as being inferior because they were not as developed as the European countries were at the level of culture or the beginning of science and technology. And they thought that the European people were intrinsically better than those who were born in Africa, for example. Now, Blavatsky addresses this, and she says that that is nonsense, that the differences in cultures are due just to circumstantial events, and that they develop in a certain way so that they provide this experience that we were talking about. But if we change the circumstances, then how a particular country or race develop will also be changed. So addressing particularly this idea about Africa, which at the time had a lot of native people, just as now, but probably what we call civilization was less spread. Addressing this, she says the Africans have never left their continent for several hundred thousands of years. If tomorrow the continent of Europe were to disappear and other lands to re-emerge instead, and if the African tribes were to separate and scatter on the face of the earth, it is they who, in about 100,000 years hence, would form the bulk of the civilized nations. And it is the descendants of those of our highly cultured nations who might have survived on some one island without means of crossing the new seas that would fall back into a state of relative savagery. Thus, the reason given for dividing humanity into superior and inferior races falls to the ground and becomes a fallacy. So I think this is very important to understand.
Now, you've been talking about races, different races, as far as Native American or Native cultures coming from, different countries. But what happened in Charlottesville had to do with people of African descent that maybe never were in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So, or even Muslim that were born and raised here. So their cultural differences aren't as wide. The main differences here are just their physical differences.
Yes, the differences now are even far more superficial than what Blavatsky was mentioning here. The whole question of racism, as we are discussing, it is quite superficial, especially from the point of view of the soul. So this is why Theosophy always promotes the idea of trying to encourage a sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, a sense of kinship with everybody, regardless of their race, nation, caste, creed, color. And this is how we can heal the world, if we start trying to recognize first in us what is truly essential, and then recognize in others that same spark, which is a unity that animates the different bodies, the different forms, the different races. So this is what I wanted to share with you. If you want to learn more about the Theosophical view on different subjects, you can visit my website, pablosender.com. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you later.